Hello, and welcome to Eating Sustainably, Episode 1, Farm to Store. We eat every day, but how often do we think about where the food on our plates comes from? Today, we want to show you that small changes in the foods we eat can have big implications in a bigger picture. To do this, we're going to examine 2 foods in each of the food groups on a recommended My Plate. Let's start with protein. Today, we have a choice between beef or chicken patty. Before cows and chickens become our food, they need food themselves. Their primary food source is corn, and although corn has grown in a lot of places all over the country, most of the corn cows and chickens eat comes from Iowa. Some other states that harvest feeding corn are Indiana, Illinois, and North and South Dakota. We'll look into how chicken are grown in a minute, but let's look at how cows are first. There are cows all over, but cows live mostly in Texas. About 12.3 million cows do, actually. That's twice as many as any other state. So the corn has to be harvested and transported in trucks to get to them. Once the cows eat the corn, they're transported in big trucks to processing plants. A lot of the major processing plants are in Kansas. Cows are huge, which means they have a lot of matter, so they take a lot of energy, water, and processing to change from a cow to a beef patty. When they finally are beef patties, they get transported by trucks to, let's say, Meyer here in East Lansing, where we pick up the patty and bring it to home to cook up. Chicken aren't a whole lot different. The corn that we use to feed the beef is also used to feed chicken, but chicken live in different places. Although Michigan does have some chicken farms, it still has less than half of the top 5 states growing chicken. The top 5 states are Arkansas, North Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, and Tennessee. After the chicken get big enough from the corn, they get trucked over to in a bunch of stacked crates to processing plants, which are really all over the place. Chicken require less processing, water, and energy than cows because of their size, but still a significant amount to make them clean and edible. Once our chicken is ready to be eaten, it is transported to our nearest Meyer and picked up by us to put on our plates. Overall, chicken take less processing than beef, and beef require 2,400 miles to get to you, while chicken only 1,400. Let's look at white versus wheat buns next.
As you might expect, the main ingredient in both white and wheat buns is wheat, which primarily grows in Kansas, Oklahoma, and Dakotas, but also is grown locally here in Michigan, where we get a lot of our local wheat products. If we get our wheat from Kansas, get it processed in Oklahoma, and get it shipped to a local store in East Lansing, it would take about 1,300 miles in all.
And because white buns require wheat to be more ground up, they also require more processing.
Now let's talk about apples. Washington is the #1 state to grow apples. About 58% of all apple production within the United States are grown in Washington. The other states include New York, Michigan, Pennsylvania, California, and Virginia. A large amount of applesauce is produced in New York. Only top-grade apples will be used to make applesauce. From there, the apples are cored, peeled, cooked, and mashed. Once packaged and ready for consumption, the applesauce is picked up by a truck and brought to your local grocery store.
So because making applesauce involves a few extra steps, it requires more processing and almost 1,000 more miles to get to you than a fresh apple does.
Now we'll take a look at potatoes. Potatoes are most commonly grown in Idaho. Idaho produces about 12.7 billion pounds of potatoes each year. Potatoes are currently the leading crop in the United States and the 4th most important crop in the world. Potatoes are also the heavily most fertilized crop as they hold a lot of pesticides.
While some whole potatoes end up in the grocery store, a lot of them get shipped to processing plants like the McCain Food Service Processing Facility in Illinois, where they are thoroughly washed with a lot of water, cut up, and prepared to be frozen and sent on their way. This makes your French fries have to travel 2,000 miles and undergo a lot more processing than the baked potato that only came 1,500 miles with less processing.
Next, we'll talk about how milk and cheese are made. Dairy cows are found all over, but the largest number of dairy farms are found in California. About 20.9% of all milk produced in the U.S. is from California. Dairy cows are milked about 2 times a day. Once the milk is collected, it is stored in silos on the farm. Tankers pick up the milk and transport it to the processing plant. Once processed, the milk is picked up by refrigerated trucks and brought to our favorite grocery store. Now we'll talk about cheese. Most of the cheese in the U.S. is made in Wisconsin. About 3.23 billion pounds of cheese is produced in Wisconsin in 1 year alone. The production of cheese starts by acquiring high-quality milk. It takes about 10 pounds of milk to make 1 pound of cheese. The milk is transported to the cheese plants in refrigerated trucks, and from there the cheese is processed. Once processed and packaged, trucks transport the cheese to our local grocery stores.
So cheese takes a couple hundred more miles to get to you and requires a little bit more processing than milk. Since lettuce and tomato are great on any sandwich, let's look into those next. California is the #1 place to grow lettuce and tomatoes. In fact, 2/3 of tomatoes in the U.S. come from the Golden State. Tomatoes are also the 4th most grown vegetable in the United States. 30 to 40,000 acres in California are used to grow them, while 166,000 acres are used for lettuce, which is more than 4 times as much land used to grow lettuce. From Cali, it takes about 2,340 miles for lettuce and tomato to get to you. Now let's erase the foods that require more processing and more miles to get on your plate. If you look closely, more processed foods are always farther away than their food group counterpart. We now know what foods require more processing and more transportation than others in each food group, so let's compare them in 2 MyPlate models. You're probably wondering why any of this matters at all. Stay tuned in the next few episodes of Eating Sustainably to learn about how the implications of transportation miles and processing have on you and the environment. So although we could go with a juicy burger on a white bun topped with lettuce, tomato, and cheese with a side of applesauce and fries, the choice of a grilled chicken, lettuce, and tomato on white bun sandwich with a fresh apple, baked potato, and glass of milk doesn't come nearly as far or undergo as much processing. We aren't saying that you should eat this for every meal. We certainly won't. But hopefully you can apply what you know about these foods to the ones you choose between when you eat. Thanks for joining us!